All right, folks, welcome. Here is a tutorial on the Pythagorean theorem. You've done everything that you're going to do on this IXL before. The only difference now is you really need to pay attention to this corner angle, okay? Pythagorean theorem is always going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared, okay? So that's your Pythagorean theorem equation, and here's how you fill it out, okay? So we've got our right angle. That's what you need to pay attention to. Here's 85 over here, here's 77, and here's a. First thing you want to do is you want to set your C, okay? So your C is always going to be the side across from your right angle. So take your right angle, draw an arrow over here, and that's going to point right to your C. So C is 85 squared, okay? That's going to equal a squared plus b squared. So now you can say a squared is a squared, and then b squared is 77 squared. Okay, now these are really big numbers. I don't expect you to know those squares off the top of your head, so we're going to go ahead and use a calculator over here. We're going to say 77 squared, so 77, if you look right here, the square is right here next to the 0 on Google Calculator. It makes the box and you have to put the 2 there. That makes 77 squared, just like this, okay? We find out what that equals, and that's going to be a squared equals 5929. And that equals 85 squared. We're going to use the calculator again for that. 85 button is over here, squared. And that's going to be 7225. 7225. Okay. So in yesterday's lesson, I gave you guys kind of steps. This first step here is set up. Okay. So you always want to set the equation up. So set up. Okay. Next, you need to evaluate. Evaluate. Okay. Third, we're going to solve. Oh, I'm sorry. This should be a plus. Third, we're going to solve. And the nice thing about Pythagorean theorem, the solving is always the same. Subtract this number over here, 5929. Subtract this, 5929. That cancels, and we get a squared equals 722 minus 5929. Don't expect you to do that in your head. Let's use the calculator. We developed these tools for a reason. Okay, 5229 or 5929. There you go. And that's going to be 1296, okay? So 1296. Now we got to get rid of this square. So now we're going to do our third step, which is take the square root, okay? So set up, evaluate, take the square root. Oh, sorry, this is solve in here. That's solve. And then we're going to take the square root. Square root of a squared is going to be a. And the square root of 1296, again, that is not one of the ones you need to know, so we're going to use the calculator for that. The square root button is right next to the 1 here. So square root of 1296. There you go. That's 36. So A is 36. And here we go. We go back to IXL. We punch in 36. And there's much rejoicing. Yay! All right, this is why this IXL is a little tricky, because this problem, it's going to be the same setup, but a slightly different execution. We practiced this last week, okay? So again, our Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Let's go ahead and check this out. This is why I've been coaching you guys this whole time to pay attention to the C, okay? Because this is the setup is everything today, okay? So we have C right here. First, we want to set our C. We do that by taking the arrow going through the right angle. It's going to point to that. So our C this time is going to be our variable. After that, these two can be in any order over here. So we've got 40 squared plus 75 squared. Okay. Now we just use that on the calculator. This is our setup, just like, I've been talking about it. So this is our setup. Okay. Now we're going to simplify. We actually don't even have to solve on this. Okay. So we're going to evaluate. So next thing we're going to do is evaluate. Okay. So we've got this evaluation. Let's go to our Google Calculator. All right, so we've got 40 squared equals 1600. Okay, so we've got 1600 plus 75 squared. 75 squared, and again, the way I'm making that is I'm clicking the exponent button and then putting a 2 there, so it makes that 75 squared. That equals 5625, and that equals c squared. Okay, so now we need to simplify. We need to add these together. So 1600 plus 5625 That equals 7225. So we have 7225 equals c squared. And then now we're going to do that last step there, which is square root. Okay, just like we've done before. So we take the square root of this side, we take the square root of this side, that cancels, and then we have to find out what that square root is. So the square root of 7225 is 85. So C is going to equal 85. Okay, then we go back to IXL and we get our points. Okay, now everything else here, it works the same way. As you get higher in IXL, they're going to try to throw you off by using decimals. So let's do 1 with decimals just to make sure you guys are all comfortable and confident with it. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay. All right, so when it comes to these decimals, the calculator is your friend, okay? You may use the calculator. On the quiz, you will be able to use the calculator. If you get a problem that looks like this on a test, on a standardized test, you will be able to use a calculator, okay? So there you go. First thing, as always, we want to identify our c. So this is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Our c is going to actually be the letter c. So we have c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So let's set these other two up. 2 squared plus 8 squared. 2 squared is going to be 4 because that's 2 times 2 is 4. 8 squared is going to be 64 because 8 times 8 is 64. And that's c squared. Now we're going to add these together. 64 plus 4 is going to be 68 equals c squared. Okay. Now for this, we can't do this in our heads, so we're going to just use the calculator to take the square root. That's going to cancel, and we're going to get c equals the square root of 68, which when we go to our Google calculator, we punch that in. Square root button is right here next to the 1. Square root of 68 is going to be this big old long decimal. Okay. And remember, this is an irrational number. So this number just keeps on, this decimal keeps going forever. We can't, this is actually, even what you see here on the calculator is an estimate. It's not the exact number, okay? So IXL usually wants us to stop at the tens place. Let me check the directions and make sure we're right on that. If necessary, round to the nearest tenth. Okay, great. So we're gonna stop here at the tenth, so it would be 8.2, but first let's check our neighbor. 4 or more, add one more. 5 or more, add one more. 4 or less, let it rest. Okay, so this is 4 or less, so we're going to let it rest. So our answer is going to be 8.2 equals C. Okay, so let's check this out. 8.2, and ba-boom, we are good. Okay, so this is how you do these problems. Okay, again, you can totally rewind this video, watch it again. Basically, same system every time. Set the write out the triangle, set the equation up, set your C first over here. If it's a number, make sure you put a number there. If it's a letter, put the letter there. And then after that, set up the rest of your equation. You have your squares, evaluate your squares, add them together if they're on the same side. And if they're not on the same side, if you've got like the letter over here and then a number and a number, you're gonna have to subtract this number to cancel, like the first two problems we did. After this, you're gonna have to take a square root using the Google calculator. And then if it's a decimal, then you're going to have to round it to the nearest tenth. Okay. Hope this video is helpful. You guys have a great day, and I will see you all in class on Thursday.